My name is Scott. I think, with the exception of Melissa's mother, I've worked with just about, well, I haven't worked with you either. But I've worked with just about everybody in this room except for Bryson. And that's changing. It's gonna change. Anyway, there's not in a million years that I thought when I started my career that this is where I would be, sitting and addressing a group on aging and performance. When I first got started, I was pretty young, ambitious. I grew up as an athlete, had really lofty athletic ambitions, hit some of them, missed some of them. That's just sort of the way it goes. As I've gotten older, I came to realize that I had left some things undone. And I was hopeful that as I got to be a little bit older, that there would be opportunities that exist to be able to continue to compete. And fortunately, the way things have changed is that those opportunities now do exist. And so there's age group world championships, which I'm aiming for in the marathon, and a host of other really high-end athletic events aimed toward aging people. And I think probably like everybody in this room, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a 53-year-old person. I still see myself as mid-20s. And I think that's some of the commonalities that we all share as we look and it's like, well, there's no way that I'm this old. But how I got to the point of wanting to do this is through experiences with the aging population throughout my career. And what I hope to do through this presentation is to present not just evidence, but to inspire you to look at aging in a different way, to look at it as an opportunity to excel, to realize that it's never too late to pursue and excel in activities of your choosing. So I'm going to move on is this evening, I want you to be inspired. I want you to believe that what you want to do is possible regardless of your age. And I know where there's some youngsters in here, one in particular. I want you to believe that you're possible. And I've had this experience over and over again. And what I've learned is that, and everybody that's trained with me has heard me probably say this probably at least once, is I ask people to do hard things. And the training style that I use is difficult. But I never ask somebody to do something that they're not capable of doing, ever. And so the statement that I use is what I think is possible and what you think is possible is going to be vastly different. And I will be right 100% of the time. Which is true, and everybody in this room knows it's true. Especially like Nancy, you know that I ask you to do some really hard things. I can't do that. Yes, you can. I don't ever set fail. So that's where we are. So I want you to walk away from experience, recognizing that it's not too late if you're getting older, and if you're middle-aged, sort of like I am, that the opportunities to excel are almost endless. And to show sort of why this matters is let's address the stereotypes that are associated with getting older. And I think these stereotypes are incredibly damaging. So if we look at, and I actually created this slide, but I think this is incredible. This is how we view aging in this country. Frail, poor health, no skills left whatsoever, lack of mobility, weak, and injury prone. And what I found through my experience is actually none of those things are actually that true. And stereotypes, they start at a really young age. We start hearing it at 30, at 40, at 50. You're over the hill, 1 foot in the grave. And what it does is it becomes demoralizing because we look and we say, well, maybe I'm not capable anymore. But through my experience in working with an ever aging population is none of these things have been true. And that, yeah, things come up with aging. I'm not a denier by any stretch that there are effects of aging that affect human performance. There are, but those obstacles can largely be overcome. And what I've learned is to overcome those obstacles through movement. And the way the rest of this presentation is going to work, I'm going to speak really briefly. So I'm going to run through all these slides, and then we're going to do a Q&A. And for those of you guys that are on Zoom, you can type your questions in the chat. Make sure you address it to everyone. And then Mikola, my adoring wife back here, will read them to me, and I'll answer them. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know the answer. But hopefully you won't stump me too much. I know Tammy's got some great questions for me. She's been thinking about it all day. So before we go on to the biomechanics and the psychology and everything else associated with aging, I want to show some examples of really what's possible, and people that are basically rewriting the script with aging. And my all-time favorite is Ed Whitlock. A lot of these names aren't going to be probably super familiar to people, but Ed is probably the single greatest inspiration for me. At age 74, he ran a 2:54 marathon. First person over the age of 70 to break 3 hours. And to put that in perspective, those of you that aren't as familiar with running, and not all these slides are on running, is that sub 7 minute pace for 26 miles. It's stunningly fast at any age. If you looked at his age graded performance, if they backed it down to say that, well, when Ed was in his prime, this would equate to a 2:03 marathon or 1 minute off the world record. What I most appreciate about Ed is that he broke every record from 70 to 85 in pretty much every distance. And that's really cool. And records are really cool because they're made to be broken, right? You see it all the time. Somebody sets a record and we strive to break those records. Well, what makes Ed unique is he actually rewrote the textbook on aging altogether. And when I literally, he rewrote the textbook. We looked at him and he's like, well, is he a fluke? Right? Did he, has he, I mean, is this like a one and out? Was there something different about him? The answer is no. He was a very simple man. He grew up in Canada, loved drinking tea every day. There was nothing special about him. He did do some running when he was in his younger ages, but nothing of, prior to his breaking the world record. I mean, his best marathon was like 2:46, and he ran that in his 30s. So, which is a respectable time, but I mean, this is like off the chart. And what he has done, and for me, and I think for a generation coming up, is he's inspired a lot of us. And his records are now being broken over and over. The times are getting faster and faster. And what he did is he opened the door. He showed that all of these stereotypes that we're talking about, being frail, too old, running ruins your knees, this, that, and the other. There's a whole multitude of stereotypes. And he, so it looks a little old in this picture, but he's 74 there. And all of those times are still, by any metric, phenomenal. So Ed is a really good example of redefining what's possible with age. Another one of my favorites, Ernestine Shepherd. She won her first bodybuilding competition at the age of 74, which is in this picture here. I don't even need to say anything else about this slide. I mean, that is amazing. And she's, again, set the bar for these figure competitions, bodybuilding competitions, to be open for older generations and to show really what's possible. Gwen Haslett, 77-year-old Briton, still surfing. She was a pioneer in women's surfing, and she continues to surf to this day. And that water looks freezing cold. You'd never catch me in that. There's no way. So I don't know why that's moving forward, but all right. All right. And the last one I'll talk about is Faja Singh. This one was relatively new to me, but he ran his first marathon at age 89, which is just amazing, from India. And the reason I selected him is that he's a very, very good example, is that it's never too late. Never done any running prior to this. He ran his last marathon at the age of 100. He's still alive, and he doesn't compete anymore in running, but he's still physically active. And the real message to Faja is you know, there's not an excuse that you can use at any age that you can't start something new. And all of these performances, these are athletically based, but if we look, you know, beyond that to aging, is it's not limited to sport and athletics and movement. I mean, that's the topic that I'm talking about tonight, but whether it's art or music, writing, work, career, that doesn't really make any difference. Is we need to work hard to defeat these stigmas that are associated that as we get older, that we have less value to society. And my thoughts on that is that we have far more value to give to the younger generation coming up. And if you look at cultures around the world, is elders are respected. So, and clearly this is moving on without me. So let's talk about the foundations for performance. There's 6 of them, and we'll go through them real quick because there's a slide on each. Mindset, without which there's nothing else. The rest of the pyramid doesn't make any difference whatsoever. And by the way, everybody in this room probably recognizes the food pyramid. We're old enough that, or the 4 food groups anyway. Pyramids have their place, but I laughed when I created this. I'm like, oh, look, it's the food pyramid, but with a different set. Strength builds the foundation, cardiovascular fitness, mobility, balance, and nutrition. Those are the pyramids. That's the pyramid for success in continuing to be active as we get older. And each contributes, and there's a myriad of subgroups that go with this. And as we wrap this up and you guys have questions, then we can answer those. Mindset. Is without this, there is nothing else. If you don't have the mindset and you don't look in the mirror and you don't look at yourself and say that I'm possible, it's possible, that what you want to do is possible, it's not. And if you can't get to that point, then you won't get to where you want to go. And sometimes that's hard. You have to look in the mirror and it's like, well, what I want to do, is it possible? And if you don't believe that, it's not. But that's the first step. And that goes with every athletic endeavor, every career endeavor, anything else, is you have to look and say, is it possible? And I love the graphic. And this is actually from impossible to I'm possible. It's actually the trademark for the special, or the Paralympics, which I thought was super cool. The second piece of this is to understand your why. And I'll try to get through this story with a little less emotion than when I recorded the first time. And drilling into your why. For me, I know what my why is. I have a whiteboard at home, and that's the first thing I look at in the morning, is know your why. I know what it takes for me to get up in the morning, and a lot of times, like everyone else, not first thing I want to do is get out of bed and go for a run. But I've placed my why in a place where I can see it and I can remember it. And it is a very powerful reminder. And I think where this comes from is, like, my why is in performance. Your why can be uniquely your own. And what I learned, and what really set me on this journey in fitness, and in particular aging, is I had a client, and as I was a young trainer, I was probably 28, 29, maybe 30, probably 30. And that doesn't seem so young to you, but it seems really young. So, and I was really driven. People who work with me now, it's like my workouts are still difficult, but then they were they were no joke. And she comes in and she liked to talk a lot. And I mean, a lot. And which is funny now, because I like to talk a lot. It was almost impossible to get sets done, but we'd work through and we'd get a few things done, and she'd work out, and she'd talk some more, and I'd drag her to the next set and the next set. And I was just pulling my hair out. I'm like, is this even worth my time? Long story short, she comes in one day, and she's way more excited than usual, which is incredible, because I was like, wow, wait, just slow it down a little bit. Well, she went to the fair, the Utah State Fair, And she could keep up with her grandkids. So that was her why. And to me, it was this epiphany. It was like, wow, fitness doesn't have to be about performance. It doesn't have to be about being the best. For her, it was the simple task of being able to go from point A to point B to point C. And what I learned from that experience is that I learned to listen. And I learned to ask, what's your why? And then I learned to identify what people's obstacles are as to what that why is, and then create movement solutions around that why. Because there's always a solution. We can find a way. Trained a woman for the Boston Marathon. We ran a total of like 8 times total for the entire thing in 6 months. She had a fantastic experience. She had surgery, seemingly insurmountable obstacles to get ready. So know your why and drill into that why. The sad part of the story is Kathy died a few months later. So a little emotional still. It's been 20 years. Yeah, she died in a car crash. And that was absolutely heartbreaking. But the lasting legacy, and the one that I try to carry on, is to create solutions for people. Moving on, work the process. Once you know your why, develop a process. As we go through a goal setting process, and we identify how you're going to get to where you want to go. How do you drill into your why? What processes do you create? And then you keep working the process and working the process and working the process. And if you work the process enough, the outcome then takes care of itself. Surround yourself with like-minded people, which is fantastic. We have a whole room full of like-minded people. The haters are going to hate. Thank you, Taylor Swift. But it's true. You're going to have, let me go back to that slide. You're going to have people that are going to be naysayers. They're going to be people to tell that you can't, that you shouldn't, that you're too old, that you don't have the mobility, that it's not possible. Well, let me tell you what, 25 years of doing this and working with people, I have seen some stunning accomplishments. I mean, stunning accomplishments of people that are way older than I am and go, wow, that is incredible. My best running friend is 60 years old and is an absolute, he's just absolutely unbelievable. Top probably 5% worldwide in running. So, and I surround myself with that. And positivity breeds positivity. If you have negative influences in your life, drop them. There's enough negativity around that we need to surround ourselves with positive people. Moving on, let's get into the nuts and bolts of how to continue performing. Strength. It's pretty easy. As we get older, strength tends to deteriorate, particularly in sedentary individuals. If you do nothing, we have a condition called sarcopenia. And I'll thank the medical profession for coming up with big words and looking right at you, Nancy. And I'm not even going to try to break down. You could probably break down the Latin roots, but sarcopenia is simply loss of muscle mass, and it happens as we get older. The great thing is that it can be offset, and it doesn't take all that much. 2 days a week lifting heavy stuff is enough to maintain muscle mass or gain muscle mass. It doesn't take nearly as much as we think that it does. And we need muscle mass. If we're going to do the activities that we want to do, we need to be able to have the musculature to be able to do that. And it is use it or lose it. We don't keep it up, we lose it 2 to 3 days a week. Cardiovascular. This is the motor behind everything that we do. If you're not, and I love bodybuilders for this reason, because they're huge, right? But ask them to go ride a bike somewhere or do something that's even remotely cardiovascular driven and they can't do it. And I think that's funny. I respect what they do. Let's take that the wrong way, but I still think it's funny because they're just huge. You think they'd be able to do a lot, but they don't have a very big cardiovascular motor. So this is the driving force behind movement. And it's essential for overall health. So we talk about cardiovascular health, it matters. And so again, this is a lot like strength training. It doesn't take a lot to get really good benefits. 30 minutes a day, that sounds like a lot, but essentially go out for a walk, go 15 minutes one direction, turn around and come back 15 minutes the other direction. It doesn't have to be hard, right? We don't have to kill ourselves to do this. It just needs to be moderate work. Gardening, cycling, swimming, hiking, cycling, it doesn't really make any difference. The biggest, most important component is to find activities you enjoy. Because if you don't like it, pickleball, that counts, sort of. If you don't enjoy it, you'll never do it. And that's just part of, like if you want to accomplish your fitness goals, you have to enjoy what you're doing. So that's cardiovascular. Mobility, most misunderstood concept in fitness. And it's really the buzzword right now. And everybody thinks mobility means I have to stretch. It's not really what it is. Mobility is simply the ability of the joints to move their appropriate range of motion. So, and there are a lot of ways to accomplish that. Stretching is one of them, but we also have Pilates, aiming to the back of the room right here. Everybody can turn and look at Jenica. Marshall, I thought, was online. If he's not, give him a shout out. Martial arts is a fantastic way to maintain mobility, foam rolling, stretching, massage therapy, yoga. There's a lot of ways to maintain joint range of motion. And by the way, just because you stretch a lot it's not injury prevention. Injuries happen because joints don't move through their appropriate range of motion. So the idea of mobility is just to make sure everything works the way it's supposed to. As we get older, and as this applies to an aging population, mobility becomes much more important because our connective tissue tends to get more restricted as we age. So, tendons get tighter, muscular systems get tighter. So devoting time to mobility training, it matters. In the work that I do with a lot of people, it's incorporated in a lot of the movement patterns that we already do. But a few minutes a day dedicated to increasing range of motion, maintaining range of motion is perfect, which is just timing couldn't be better. Balance. As we get older, single biggest thing for an aging population, fall prevention, right? And there's no way I can underemphasize the risk that falling represents to mortality. For senior citizens that take a fall, the increased risk of mortality is phenomenal. So maintaining balance is critical. Balance training is critical. And it's not really all that hard to do. As you're starting, just simply stand in one place and close your eyes and see how well you balance. You don't have to be on one foot. Move to one foot, stand, brush your teeth on one foot, right? Do it with eyes open, eyes closed. Stand on an unstable surface like a Bosu or anything else. Go to a yoga class, Pilates, anything along those lines. That's balance, right? And it matters. It's not to say that we don't fall, we do, but outside, if you're falling for no reason, you're not tripping over stumps or chasing a tennis ball, Nancy, overextending for one, and you're falling for no reason, it's a pretty significant sign, and that actually falls for no reason necessitate a physician's visit. So nutrition, the topic that is probably one that gets all of us in more trouble than anything else, because everybody's offering a solution. Nothing has to be extreme. Everything is balanced. We can talk about macro prescriptions. We can talk about grams. We can talk about micro prescriptions. We can do all of this stuff. But the bottom line is eat a balanced diet. Good balance of healthy carbohydrates, good balance of healthy fats, good quality sources of protein. It's not all that difficult. Moderation is the key. So the saying, moderation is in all moderation, right? And regarding that is, I think there's the myths that are associated with like training and the fitness professionals is that we're ultra strict. I mean, I would love for my plate to look like this. It doesn't very often, sometimes not, only if somebody else is making it. Is celebrate with, there goes Rudy. Your child is barking. You're fine. Rudy can come up here. Oh yeah. Rudy can make a Zoom appearance. Right there. Nancy will take him. Um, but nutrition is not nearly as complicated as we make it. You know, if you have celebrations, celebrate in moderation. And yeah, you don't have to go all out. Nicola and I share every time we go out. So if we go out to dinner, we share meals. And you know, the great thing about that is you get twice as much, right? Because you get this, and then you can share a dessert, you can share and it's a great way to experience I say savor the flavor in small portions. So, you know, like I said, celebrate, but celebrate in moderation. Exercise and food is not an excuse to overeat, right? The reward system doesn't work very well. Make sure your plate's colorful. Now, like this is like fantastic, looks great, except I hate avocados. I want to like them. I really do. I would like to like an avocado. I just can't. Plan your meals when you can. And cook at home. That's the big thing is we do a lot of processed foods in this country. The more you can cook at home, the more control you have over what you have. So that's nutrition. All right. How do we get the most out of performance when we're aging? And I know, like I said, personally, I know pretty much everybody in this room, and there's a commitment to fitness. For those that are on Zoom that I may not know, is if you're looking, and this is not a shameless plug for training, I mean, it sort of is, but it's not, is if you are really goal-oriented and there's something that you want to accomplish, hire somebody that knows what they're doing, right? Is you don't have to walk this path alone, right? There are a lot of really good people out there that can help you, that will believe in you, that will not dismiss you. And we're going to talk about that in the next slide as to how we typically get dismissed as we get older. But hire a good coach, somebody that can reinforce a positive mindset, that can pick you up when you're down and remind you of what your why is. They can help with appropriate goal setting and realistic goal setting. They're adaptable to your needs. They understand the role of rest and recovery. And on those lines, the biggest issue with aging and performance is, and I found this through my own experiences getting older, is that it takes me a lot longer to recover. That doesn't mean that I can't do the hard workouts. And it doesn't mean that they're not quality hard workouts. It just means it takes me a little bit longer to recover. So instead of doing speed work every other day, I might do it every third day or every fourth day. My long runs, it takes me 2 or 3 days to recover from. And I'm okay with that. Just recognize that that's one of the costs of aging. That doesn't mean we can't do things. It just means we need to adapt. And having a good coach by your side can help you with that adaptability. Creating an environment of autonomy and accountability, all right? Be accountable to somebody. Allow them, have them help you make choices that are your own, right? I don't dictate to people what they should be doing. I do create an environment that says, what would you like to do and how do you see yourself getting to that point? And then what can I do to assist you in that, right? The choice is yours. I'm here to help you, right? I'm not here to decide for you what you should be doing. Once you decide what it is that you want to do, then your coach should be able to guide you that direction. And I'm going to wrap up the slideshow here before we do Q&A, is how do we move forward as we get older? Rest and recovery, we covered that already. Build slowly, right? Take your time. Everybody starts somewhere, right? I look down, I have the Berlin Marathon in how many weeks, Mick? Like 6, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. It's coming up. Yeah, it's not, it's way closer than I want it to be. I have to be realistic with where I am. I would love to say the world record, by the way, for my age group is 2:19, which is stunningly fast. I sort of look and say, wow, that's really quick. And I'd love to be able to run that in Berlin. It's not going to happen. So be realistic with where you are. Respect your starting point and recognize it is just a starting point. You're not going to stay there forever. You can move beyond that. The last part of this, before I turn it over to Q&A, is build a good team. And I don't mean just like a medical team or your coaches. Build a good social network. Involve your family. Involve people that will build you up, that will make and reinforce and support the things that you want to do. when it comes to medicine or the fact that we get injured, work with physicians, physical therapists, health practitioners that go beyond just returning you to a sedentary activity level. I had a conversation yesterday with a client whose mother had fallen and had broken her humerus. It's a bummer. And her physical therapist has basically told her that she hasn't regained full range of motion or strength. Has told her, it's like, well, this is as good as it's going to get. You're old. You're 70 some odd years old. You know, the joints back together, but she can't do the things that she wants. And my advice to that is, well, find somebody who believes that you can do these things and you should be able to do these things. So often, the stigma and stereotype of being elderly just diminishes people's desire to help you. They just don't believe in you anymore, right? That it's too late, right? You should be happy just being sedentary, and that's a terrible goal. Last thing I do want to talk about is I see these two sitting over here, and I'm not going to turn the Zoom camera over, is I want to talk about, and I wish Ava was here too, because she had actually inspired this part of the conversation, is cross-generational influences. I have, and the Zoom people can't see this, and I'm sorry, Nancy sitting over here, who's in her 70s, and Maisie sitting over here, who's not quite in her 70s, is not even in her, she's barely in her teens. And what I've watched, and through my own experience in small group training, as I pair senior athletes, senior individuals with young athletes, and I mean young athletes, is this commonality that they share, the inspiration and the common language that's shared through movement. So I've watched Maisie teach, Nancy Taekwondo. I've watched Master Parnell, who's a phenomenal instructor, take and guide Nancy through now a green belt, a proud green belt over here. And I've watched these younger generations rise up and support the older generations. And I've watched the older generations mentor the younger generations. And we need that. We need that. I don't have anything else with the slides other than it's time for Q&A if we have questions. And so I'll open it up first to this room, and then Mick, you can fire away. Tammy, you said you had one. You're on the spot now. All right. Sydney. Yeah. Huh? Okay, well, I can address that. There was so the question is that running wears out your knees, and her physician tends to believe in that. Now, here's what the research says. There was a very long, longitudinal study done on runners, and this went on for I should have brought the study, but it went on for 25 or 30 years, maybe longer. And it looked at the health of runners' knees, and people that stayed running from start to end. And what they found is that there was no significant damage to the knees for people that ran. The only time that there was degradation in the knee had to do with people that had an injury that took place, something that damaged the cartilage. And so if you had an ACL injury, or you'd had another existing injury that had placed a stress on the cartilage of the knee that started the degeneration problem, that, running was going to contribute to that degeneration. If you did nothing, you were still going to get the degeneration. It wasn't going to make any difference that process had started. But the mere fact that you're running, and I have 30,000, maybe more miles on my legs. And I had knee x-rays done not that long ago. And the joint spacing, which is what they look like, cartilage, looks exactly the same as it did when I was 25. It hasn't changed. And what I find, that's more the norm than it is, it's not. So does it, if you have existing injury, is it going to make it worse? Maybe. If you've had no injury, no chance. And I would argue, and I could probably pull up some research on this, is that the sport that you're involved in, tennis, is far more damaging in the long term than running, because of just the sheer magnitude of force in multiple directions is incredibly hard on the joint structure. And you're on a concrete surface the entire time, or most of the time, unless you're fortunate. Did that answer your question, Nicola?
Next question from Jonathan Green. Scott, can you talk about the role of supplements we should consider as we age? Do they have nutritional benefits, or are they more of a placebo? This is from Jonathan Green, the one who spoke.
All right, Jonathan, you're gonna. I should have known your high level of intelligence was going to throw something at me. Supplementation is super controversial, and for good reason. There is absolutely no regulation of the industry, so what you're taking becomes a bit of a mystery. And funny, I had that conversation today with clients over a supplement that turned out that it might actually just be ibuprofen. So just sort of funny, because it's like, well, no wonder why I feel better. It's ibuprofen. The placebo effect is real. More along the lines, if you believe something is going to work, it probably is going to do some good. There is some research, some peer-reviewed research, that some supplementation works. We do know that turmeric, for example, or crocosamic in turmeric, it does work. It does reduce inflammation. The dosing is somewhat questionable. Nobody seems to know like what's the optimal dose that is. But my personal philosophy on supplementation is a do no harm approach. If it doesn't do any harm and you believe that it's going to do you some good, give it a whirl. But for the most part, a lot of what's out there is not very good. Do you need a follow-up on that, John? Yeah. Hang tight, Nancy.
On supplements, some of them don't participate in third-party auditing. Nobody knows whether the product that is being advertised in this is either in it or not in greater amounts than is on the bottle, or that every bottle has the same amount as before.
That's right.
But some do, and there are little bit like labels, like signs that you can look for, and there's two particular, I forget their names, but third parties will come and audit, and because it's reliant on third parties, you really want their seals, and that means something that actually does help distinguish.
And that's what she's saying is that, in case you couldn't hear her on Zoom, is that there are third-party verifications for some supplement brands, and those do carry some weight, because for the most part, most supplements, even by pill, you don't know what you're actually getting, and there is no international or even federal standard that dictates what should be in there. And if you go into like the peer-reviewed research of like even just multivitamins, is what they claim is in there is vastly either understated or overstated. So supplementation, there is some good ones out there. For the most part, if you can't get it through your daily nutrition, then 1 second, Nicola, Nancy had a question.
There actually have a comment on it. There are some specific supplements which you can still get and show you very dangerous. And one of them is Ageless. And not only do you get that in an energy supplement, but you get that in supplement.
Right. Well, so ephedrine was banned by the supplement industry for a number of years, and that stemmed from a lawsuit at a New York athletic club where a trainer had prescribed it as a supplement to a hypertensive client. They stroked and died. So it was banned, and now, but it's been reinstated.
It's been reinstated, and it's really, really detrimental.
Yep.
And the other thing was a recent study that showed in the elderly that there are some sort of subclinical vitamin deficiencies that go on, particularly the B vitamins, because B12 absorption in the gut goes down with age. And it did show that the elderly did better with the standard Centrum type vitamin one a day, and that seems to be all it's needed.
Yeah, and I think that to your point, and I'll add to that, is that's a good conversation for your physician, right? Is get your blood work done. If you're showing deficiencies, work with your medical team on getting balance back in there. They're the ones that can answer that question. Nicola, you had a follow-up. You had a.
Well, there I'll put these questions together because they're both about rest and recovery.
Yeah.
Arden wants to know how does an individual determine what is appropriate rest and recovery? And Jonathan wants to know about the ice bath trend. And you recommend that.
Sure. So I'll answer Arden's question. Arden, you need to go back to back hard every single day. Becky's going to support me on that answer. No, since Arden is a very talented cyclist, and we've sort of gone back and forth on a lot of his. I mean, he's phenomenal. And knowing when to work and when to rest, it's listen to your body is the single biggest rule of thumb. Is if you're starting a hard workout and you feel flat, it may be time to pull the plug and say it's not, I can't do this. And you have to have that flexibility. There are times that, like in my athletic career, I've gone to a workout and I've been flat and it's like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to have to learn to push through this. As I've gotten older and I have some more flexibility with my athletic goals, I still like to work really hard, but I also know that if I go out on a day that I'm scheduled to work hard and things just aren't there, then it's okay just to either take the day off or to just reduce the volume. So listen to your body on that one.
Does Arden think that that can ever be confused by depression? That you feel like you're physically down, but it's really an emotional thing? Because I think that's one of the things that's hard for people to know. If you're depressed, you're screwed.
Okay.
If it's physical, it's different.
I'm going to push that. I'll repeat the question for Arden. Arden, Nancy's asking, is psychological state as depression a contributing factor to overall fatigue, and should you weigh that in? And I'll answer, as you're pondering that question, I'll answer John's questions on the trend of ice baths. Cold water therapy has been around forever. If you go to any college training center around the country, pro training centers around the country, ice baths have been in use forever. Do they aid in recovery? Yeah, absolutely. I think they're fantastic. Are they a panacea and they cure everything, every health disease out there? No. Do they aid in recovery? Yes. It doesn't take nearly as much time as you think. It's 7 to 10 minutes in a cold tub of water. And then you realize the benefits. And we can talk ad nauseum about the cold water benefits, but the short answer to that is yes. Did we get an answer from Arden?
No, but Alan has a question about CBD products, rub-on, sticks, oils.
So the CBD oils, the sort of the research is trending that, yeah, there can be some benefit to them, especially the rubs is CBD increases blood flow. Anything that increases blood flow tends to, not always, but tends to be somewhat beneficial. The research isn't great, to be honest. I mean, it's more peer-reviewed research is coming out on CBD. Some of it says that it works, some of it doesn't. And that goes with, a lot of things. It depends on what you're looking for, but it's the same. I'll give you the same answer. It's a do no harm. And it does appear to be a do no harm. So if you feel like it works for you, then fantastic. Kenny.
So I don't connection between fitness and mental health too huge.
Yeah.
Do you see differences between young athletes and older athletes with mental health?
Regarding
like you get a figure when you're tired, when you're tired of no, or is there less? You tend to be less depressed if you exercise regularly, right?
Yeah.
This is a social challenge, right? Usually.
Yeah. So
do those things have the kind of same impact, or are the things that you've noticed in particular seem to benefit people as they age more than younger?
I think that's a complicated question. And the question is, and so I'll repeat it, is there a correlation between like getting older and the mental and psychological benefits of exercise versus younger athletes? When I finished my master's program and we're in the middle of that, we looked at this fairly extensively as the psychological benefits to exercise. And you would assume that in young individuals that the need for activity might be less. And this is going to be a complicated answer, but exercise straight across the board, regardless of age demographics, shows a positive impact on mental health, without a doubt. However, it can go the other direction, especially in youth competitive sports, where there's a focus on outcome and on perfectionism and on performance. And what tends to happen, and this could happen in older athletes, but it's much more prominent in younger athletes, is they start to feel the pressure. They feel like they can't perform. They feel like they can't live up to society's expectation. You dump on top of that social media expectations and this view of perfection that literally nobody has. And then you see the damaging psychological effects that are associated with exercise and the young group. And you particularly see it in the development of disordered eating. And that's that. So it's a complicated answer in regards to like runner's high. Is there benefit to activity in a general sense? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the studies are crystal clear that if you want to help to combat depression, physical activity is a key element. We really looked at the biopsychosocial impacts of exercise. And so we looked at what's the physical impact of exercise, psychological, and what's the social impacts of exercise. Psychological and social tend to go hand in hand. Is we tend to exercise in groups. We tend to get together. It has to be a social experience. It tends to be positive. And that's straight across the board. Does that help? Mikla, is there anything else out there?
Yeah, Arden has a comment. He says, depression can lead to a downward cycle. If you're depressed and lack energy and motivation, it's difficult to exercise, which then lowers your energy. So treat the depression.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Yeah, I think it's and the mental health component is complicated because if you're in a depressive cycle, and this really goes to the need to ask for help, right? And the stigma associated with mental health in this. I'll get on a tangent, but the stigma associated with mental health in this country is abysmal. And that's something that we definitely need to address. Exercise is a key component to any sort of mental health programming, but I mean, is seek help. I mean, that's the bottom line. Any other questions? Kim? Nada? Portia? I'm gonna put you right on the spot.
No.
All right. Nancy?
I think there's a lot of problems with mindset. And the mindset is on the part of the person who's old.
Yep.
Because they think, well, maybe this is what I expect as age. You know, I've never been 75 before. I don't know. The other one is what they're the children of the people. Because they're thinking, oh, well, she's just getting old. The physicians are not often very interested in the old. And they will say, you know what they expect, they're old. In fact, I even had that with a 95-year-old who came in, and her chief complaint was she couldn't walk. And I'm thinking, well, she's 95.
Right.
And then it turned out that she had a disc in her head, and that's why she couldn't walk. And I couldn't get a new surgery. And she walked into my office using a cane was at the time of her granddaughter.
Oh, that's awesome.
But people hurt, and she and her daughter didn't get democracy.
Right.
And I think the same is true with trainers, with testing here, with everybody else. It's very easy for the person to say, you know, this is old, the person's old. You know, why do I want to teach this person down without going to be able to competition and promote the name, the term, and they're not going to be able to do anything. Therefore, I think for anyone who's training, the young person is more interesting than the old person.
And I would agree with that statement in general, except that my experience has been the absolute polar opposite. Is that, and no disrespect to the youth, the older people that I work with are extraordinarily interesting, and from a movement problem, a movement solving equation, is far more interesting because the ability to create solutions to obstacles is far greater, right? So you came to me a number of years ago. And, you know, we've had this conversation, but, you know, you had given up, right? You had given up. You didn't think that you were capable. And I didn't see any of that in you. I still don't. And that's, I think, is the difference is what it does is it takes somebody just to take your hand, hold you up and say, no, you're possible, right? And this is how we're going to do this. And yeah, it's going to be hard. And you learn very
There was it was an issue of not just age, but bad knee, all those other.
Yeah, but the knee is still there.
Yeah.
Works just fine. I didn't see that as an obstacle. You have other joints. You have another knee. You can abuse that one. Other questions? Yeah.
So you have this kind of talk about balance and the falling is the biggest mortality prediction.
Yeah.
Why mortality?
Nancy might be able to address this a little bit more.
Fractures, hip fractures.
Yeah.
Subdural lymphomas, if you want to get your head. There are a whole bunch of reasons for it, but hip fractures are huge. And probably when people get up in their mid-80s and 90s, it's a major cause of death. And rarely once a person will die. Activities that they
Yeah, and it also, if you look at it from almost a psychological state, is what happens is they give up. You see it, and it's they're just. It's hard to describe because unless you see it, but the statistics are devastating for people that fall. The other interesting one is grip strength. It's also correlated to mortality. So loss of grip strength is a strong correlation to underlying health conditions. And so as people get older, we test grip strength. You're doing fine. Plenty of longevity left. Don't think too much of that. Yeah, balance. Go ahead.
Another thing that happens is they don't have skinny goals.
Right.
If you say, I've got, so I can say, I've got almost 25 years left and I couldn't have 25 years. I don't want to be 100, and so they would say, okay, I'm getting old, I've got 25 years left, that's my goal in the beginning.
Right.
Because I expect to deteriorate. And I think it's important to keep the goal. It's important to find this. This is one reason that this 5.0 thing is really so great.
Yep.
And it's goal work,
It is.
Nowadays, it's going to help you get a belt.
Yep. And then you can start sparring.
Yeah.
Yep. You can hit Nancy in the face finally.
No, but those kind of activities that are goal work, you can kind of want to do goal work. It's goal work.
And I would add to answer your question on balance is and where martial arts is grossly underrated is the level of balance that's required in any of the martial arts, whether it's Tai Chi or Taekwondo, is staggering. Can it be increased? Absolutely. Depending on what the underlying condition is. There are some vestibular issues and some other things that may need a specialist to help with, depending on what the degradation of the balance is or what the cause of it is. But if it's just age related, inactivity related balance, yeah, that can be rehabilitated fairly quickly. It doesn't take all that long. That's pretty easy. Tammy, I'm still waiting for my question. All right, got it. Go.
Would you say that motion is motion?
I love that. That came from Dr. Fouget. Is motion is lotion. It's funny as before I came over here, I was talking to my friend Taha, and he had some advice for the aging population. He's like, just move, right? It's not all that hard. Just get out and move. Motion is lotion. The body was meant to move, and that's regardless of age. And this goes to your point, is that running. Part of the reason there's not degeneration of the knees is that running creates a natural lubricating effect of the cartilage. As it's contracted, it tends to want to self-lubricate. Same thing with the discs in your back. Is our body was made to move, and it doesn't make any difference how old we are. It is made to move. So motion is lotion. Yeah, one of my favorite physical therapists. Motion is lotion, Scott. All right, great. Anything else, Josh? I'm waiting. Fire away.
What's your opinion on meditation?
On meditation?
Yeah.
Essential.
Yeah.
Essential. So I wish I did more of it. And this is going to be do as I say, not as I do. And that goes to mindset, goes to state of mind, creating a peaceful state of mind. Research really indicates that 15 minutes daily of meditation has profound positive mental health benefits. And meditation can take the form of a lot of things. It doesn't have to be sitting Indian style humming. There's any number of ways to meditate. There are fantastic apps out there. Calm app is a really good one that uses guided meditation. Yes, fundamentally, yes. Calm, CALM, calm. I use an app for journaling called Growth Day. that gives me cues to journal every single day. Love it. Do you use it? It's fantastic. Brandon Burchard. Have you listened to his books? Oh, yes. You a fan? Oh, a huge fan. Yeah, Brandon Burchard is a fantastic. If you don't know who it is, listen to his stuff. He's incredibly inspiring, and that's where I base a lot of my stuff on now. My whiteboard came from that. I write in my journal most days now. At the very least, the growth day gives me prompts. So if I don't feel like I have time to write a whole journal thing, I can write single word sentences to evaluate what my state of mind is. It's a great way to wake up and go to bed in the evening. And that's usually what I do. Is in the morning I'll fill it out, in the evening I'll fill it out. 5 minutes.
And I think it can help create your why, right?
It does help create your
Right?
why.
And your dream of like how you want to be in the future.
Yep.
During those times, you can really picture what you're going to be.
Yep. Every single day. And that's how you should start your day, is you go and you look at your board, you look at your and say, all right, this is what I want to be. And I think on the note of change is in order to change, something has to be different. Right. And sometimes that's not so easy. Right. But it's essential. You can't do the same thing over and over again and expect that things are going to be different. They're not going to be. So something has to be different. And so how you approach your morning, what you get up and tell yourself, your self-talk, all of these things matter. Journal those things, write them down, get them out, acknowledge them for what they are. Do not bury them. I have negative self-talk. I was fortunate as a college, when I was in college, I worked with a sports psychologist because I went through a phase where I'd get 3 or 4 minutes into a race and I just quit. I just like, I suck at this. I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. And what she was able to do is Dr. Evelyn Hall, she was fantastic. We sat down in sessions and we developed mantras. We developed the idea that acknowledge that I'm feeling this. Wow, I'm hurting. Because racing was hard, right? It's really hard. And it's like, acknowledge that feeling and then develop a mantra to work through it. And I use that to this day. I ran a Big Sur Marathon in April with my wife, and it was the windiest day in course history. 40 miles an hour from in your face from miles, basically 4 to 22. It really wasn't that much fun, but I used mantras to keep moving forward. You know, every time I get blown off the course, and people actually got blown off the course. But it's just kept moving one foot in front of the other, you know, and sometimes that's what it is. You know, you get into a space where sometimes it's left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. That's what it is. And that's a metaphor to anything in life, right? Is to keep moving forward, right? Sometimes you don't see the light, but it's there, you know, just keep moving. Anything else? Right at an hour, just about. I think we're good. You didn't ask me any questions, Melissa. Or Melissa's mother, and I don't know Melissa's mother's name. Hi, Heidi. Do you have a question for me? Huh? Yep.
So I was trying to start out again with always, I feel like as getting older, like it's more exciting when I'm 58.
Yep.
By 60, I want to have done this.
Yep.
And so it's almost more exciting than it was 10 years ago, you know. It's
Yep.
more of a challenge that age, but I'm just wondering, I mean, you're starting out, it's slow again, but I mean, it doesn't feel like work to me, like.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Too,
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
But I know I can do other things. I mean,
Yeah, so you should support your running with some, we go back to the principles that we talked about here, with a little bit of strength training. Doesn't take much. A little bit of mobility work, you know, whether that can be your choice, whether that's going to see Jenica over here, or, you know, doing some foam rolling, of which your daughter knows how to do. She can teach you. And then incorporating just the other principles just to support the joint structure. So as you start to increase your volume of running, and I'd recommend that you do that slowly. You know, run walk combinations are a great way to get going. I walk in every single run I do, because there's usually something interesting that I see that I want to look at. You know, Mikola grabs the raspberries off the bush every morning. So, and I would tell you that and your fitness experience, and as you're getting ready to look to do another half, is to savor the entire experience, right? In the getting ready. And take your progressions really slow, but then supplement with a little bit of strength, a little bit of mobility work, make sure you're getting good fluids, and good nutritional support. You'll be just fine. And you don't have to wait till 60. You can do it by the time you're 59. We can get you ready very quickly. Doesn't take much. Anything else? Nada? Okay. We'll call it good. Thanks for coming. All right. Mick, you want to kill the Zoom since you're the host? All right. You have other questions? You do.
I started doing a more structured, systematic approach to. I mean, I know we have the what do you call it, the measures.
See your silver sneakers?
But something that people would have to pay a little bit more, that really structures, evaluates their health, goes into their health problems, designs a specific program for individual people, rather than just going into that room and do its general purpose, which I'm not saying anything bad about that, or going into the pool and doing general aerobics. But I think that I think there's room for a lot more points of improvement in many of these people. But I don't know if people would enroll in something.
Specifically seniors or just people, members in general?
Well, I think it applies to members in general, but I'm sort of thinking of the seniors, because I think it's the seniors who have the worst impression of what they're capable of doing.
We do have a program, SOS, which we.
Yeah, seniors on stream, on and off. Donita and I actually had the conversation yesterday about restarting the fall prevention program, which would incorporate those pieces of health and medical history as a part of the screening process. So those things are coming. We just have to figure out how we're going to implement them.